My name is David Ellington, and I work for Wilson Audio. Wilson Audio is a company located in Provo, Utah, which has been around for 50 years. Last year we celebrated our 50th anniversary. And Wilson Audio was founded by Dave and Cheryl Lee Wilson in the pursuit of making a speaker that would allow Dave Wilson to be able to hear his recordings. He, in his part-time, he would make audio recordings and sell them. And he had a pursuit to make the very, very best recordings possible. And so he oftentimes thought out of the box. Instead of accepting the standard equipment, he would always search for new ways of making the best recordings possible. And so because of that, he needed to be able to have speakers that would portray music in the way that he heard it, the way that a microphone heard it. And this is very different from most speaker designers. Most speaker designers just say, look, I want to create a speaker, and they use a computer program to be able to kind of design the size and all of that. Dave Wilson was not that way. He thought very much outside of the box. And what he realized very early on was the importance of time alignment, the ability to be able to align the sound at whatever distance you sit from the speaker and whatever height you are from the speaker. And because of that, no speakers at the time would be able to satisfy that. And so he started researching the importance of that. He even would tie strings from the ceiling of his living room down to modules, and he would move them. And that's where he understood when you got them perfectly aligned, the speakers, there was magic that happened. And so what you see today is an outgrowth of that, of Dave Wilson and Wilson Audio's research and the continuation with his son Daryl. So the importance of time alignment really is at the cornerstone of what Wilson Audio does. A very important concept is that Dave Wilson, the way that he described, our company's direction was authentic excellence and excellence in all things. In other words, things that might seem extravagant to other companies are just a part of the ethos of who we are. Trying to find the best materials to make the enclosures, finding things that are absolutely quiet, that the enclosures don't resonate or cause room interactions. So finding something like that, and that material which we use today, we call it X material. It is a phenolic resin, but it is incredibly stiff. It is monotonic, meaning that if you were able to excite it, it would stay at one frequency, and then it has a high internal dampening, so it dampens very, very fast. The end result is that you don't get an enclosure that smears the leading edge transient of sound, and that you hear all of the natural detail because the enclosures don't contribute a sound of their own. When you look at any speaker, a large portion of the speaker is driver technology. And Wilson Audio, from the start, would partner with companies that would help make drivers that they need, and that would modify existing drivers to what Wilson needed, or would partner with us and would allow us to co-develop drivers. And so as you see this speaker, we use the heart of it, I would say, is the mid-range. And this mid-range is very, very special. It is, if we were to turn it around, you would see that it uses 4 Alnico magnets. Alnico is a type of a magnet. So some of the most common magnets are a ferrite magnet, a neodymium magnet, and what is very uncommon is Alnico. Alnico is a very old magnet technology. The issue with it was, while it had incredible strengths, or incredible virtues, the magnet structure was not as strong, and so people would oftentimes pair it with horns to be able to get the efficiency. Wilson Audio, Dave Wilson in particular, wanted to design this speaker to go with his Wham Master Chronosonic for his magnum opus. And he started working on the driver, but it was unable to finish before his passing. And so after his passing, Daryl and Vern Credile are Daryl Wilson, the CEO and a leader of Wilson Audio, and Vern, our lead engineer, took that project back up and finished that to be able to get the efficiency to where it needed to be. We have partnered it with the Wilson Convergent Synergy tweeter. This version is the carbon version, and so this is the 6th iteration of this tweeter. And what we've done is it is a silk dome tweeter, but if you look at the back of it, you will see that there's a 3D printed carbon fiber rear chamber that we control the back wave. This back wave extends its response up to 35 kilohertz, but more importantly, extends it down to below 1,000 hertz. And so we get a seamless transition in these drivers. And so these are 2 examples of where we start with a tweeter, that this was an off-the-shelf tweeter, and we worked to refine it to what we needed, and then further modified it. And then here is a mid-range where we start, it was ground-up design. The only thing in common is you might see drivers that use a similar cone. But even that, we will listen and see if there are new cone technologies with that exact existing magnet structure. And so, so this is the Alexia V. The V talks about the material that we use. So in the enclosure, we use that X material, that foundation for a quiet enclosure. In the baffle, so behind this felt, we use a different formulation called S material, and it has to do with using the mid-range. And then you'll notice that we have inlaid a V material, which is a vibration material. You'll see here, this is X material, and this is V material. And that acts as a vibration sink between each of the modules. We even have it under the tweeter so that none of the delicate frequencies that the mid-range or tweeter produce are interfered with by the bass cabinet. One thing you'll also notice is a Wilson exclusive. You'll notice that we use 2 different size bass drivers. They're in the same enclosure, being fed the same signal. This is something that no one, it's a Wilson exclusive, and Vern Credile, when he came up with the formulation to be able to get these 2 to work perfectly together, what happens is you don't get the, when you have 2 drivers of the same size being fed the same signal, you'll normally get a little bit of bump in a nodal reinforcement of those 2 drivers. By using dissimilar sized drivers, you get more linear low bass weight and extension and more upper bass resolution. And so it absolutely is a big benefit. One of the things, if you come around to the back of the enclosure, it's a little bit darker, but you'll see that there are adjustments back here. These adjustments allow you to be able to reposition the speaker for any size room. So maybe you start out in a room this size, but later you move into a room that's either larger or smaller. These adjustments, and you'll notice here, there's even very, very fine adjustments with the tweeter right here. There's very fine detents, and these reposition. So whenever your dealer sets these up in your room, they will measure from the position of the speaker to your seating distance and from your ear height to the floor. And they will look in the manual, and it shows the positions, the settings that you will make, and that absolutely time aligns the speaker right at the listening position. And so these are very, very unique technologies to a Wilson loudspeaker. One last thing that I would share with you is this. About 6 years ago, Wilson Audio purchased one of our suppliers. It was called Reliable Capacitor. Reliable Capacitor is famous for making the multicap. It is a capacitor with multiple capacitors inside. And that technology was very, very important to Wilson over the decades, over the past many, many years, probably about 40 years. And the owner was going to retire, and he wanted to just close Reliable Capacitor down. We sent a team out, they evaluated, we ended up purchasing them, and have since invested quite a bit in new capacitor machines and advancing the capabilities of capacitors. And what that has done is that has given us even more both dynamic and intimate sound simultaneously. All of the dynamics are better, but then you can also hear further into the recordings. And so we can talk even more about that. But that's one of the incredible technologies that Wilson has invested in, and we continue to push what's possible in that. So in regards to time alignment, when a recording is being made, you have microphones, and the microphones, they pick up a full bandwidth signal. That signal is preserved together through the mixing board into whatever recording medium. It could be tape, it could be disc, it could be vinyl, whatever it ends up being put on. It could be streamed, but that signal integrity is together all the way through your digital to analog converter, your preamp, your amp, and when it gets to your speakers, your crossover divides that up into 3 or 4 or 5, or how many drivers you have. And in the case of this speaker, you've just now split that entire signal into bass, mid-range, and treble. And now it's separated. How do we get that back together to be able to travel in time? And without having an adjustable loudspeaker, the time domain is never right. Most speakers are set up in their time coherent at about 3 feet from the speaker. In a Wilson audio loudspeaker, you'll notice that we have multiple modules. So we have a bass module, mid-range module, tweeter module. And these adjustments allow us to be able to precisely align the signal, or the leading edge transient of the sound at the seated position. Music is very complex. If we took an instrument like a violin, you have a bow and you have strings. And when you run the bow across the strings, the vibrations reflect on the body of the violin. They go into the violin, they bounce back and come through the soundboard, and then out into the room. And they're very complex, both direct and reverberant sounds. If you don't have a time-aligned speaker, you never get all of those complexities aligned precisely. Setup is important as well. Setup. One of the great things about a Wilson loudspeaker is that a Wilson speaker is non-resonant. It's very, very quiet. It doesn't excite the walls. And so you're able to put the speaker much closer to walls without having to have as many sound treatments in there. You're able to put them in much smaller spaces. And then with the adjustability, you're able to sit much closer or much further away. You're able to adjust them and accommodate different rooms. And so that is really a big difference. Brownish material behind the mid-range, that is the S material. It's a different formulation that works better for the mid-range frequencies. And then the V material, if I were to take a hammer and strike X material, it would be one frequency and quiet really fast. But it would have a spike. S material, same thing, but different resonant characteristic, because what we're trying to do is move any resonant characteristics away from the frequencies in which they're playing. And then the vibration material. That vibration material, if I were to take a hammer and strike it, it would be like a thud, really low, quiet, because it absorbs the vibration. Now that material you would never use in the rest of the enclosure. It doesn't have the same properties that we need. And so we're very, very specific about what we're looking for. Now, using wood would be a lot easier. To give you an example, a sheet of X material compared to the same thickness of high-density fiberboard, this costs 14 to 16 times more per sheet. It's a lot more expensive. It's also much harder to machine. It's very difficult to machine. If you go too fast, you burn up bits. If you go too slow, you melt the material. So you have to go at very precise rates. And then, even then, bits that cost $500 to $600 per bit, they don't last a long time. You can resharpen them about once, and then after that, it's very, very difficult. But for us, it is that pursuit of authentic excellence. we listen to everything. We listen to solder. We spent 4 years listening to different solders to find the best solder. We use a 2-part adhesive to glue the enclosures, when they're before they're assembled. And that material we've listened to make sure that sound transmits through it and exit the speaker. So we listen to everything that we can to be able to provide the best possible. That is our goal. That is, being faithful to what Dave Wilson and now his son Daryl Wilson, that pursuit of authentic excellence.